All right, Bourbon Quest. We're here at Chattanooga Whiskey in their banquet room. Tim has been very generous and pouring us a couple of samples. The first one is going to be their Founders Blend. So, cheers, Bourbon Quest.
Cheers. Bourbon Quest.
So definitely rich, dark caramel. Wow, nice, smooth finish. Good mouthfeel. Really lingers on the back end. A little bit of spice, black pepper.
So you've got two unique products because neither one of these products are available on the market right now.
So these are not available.
The Solarium barrel strength, or Solarium barrel is 91, and that is your biggest seller between the Chattanooga whiskey products. We do not offer it at barrel strength, so you guys are sipping it at approximately 118 proof here.
Wow.
And it is arguably my favorite product in the house, A, because you can't get it anywhere, and B, because it is my favorite recipe at barrel strength.
All right.
And then you've got Founders. Most of you have it on your left, Founders. So again, this is our 10th anniversary. This is a blend of past, present, and future. It's about 40% 1816 and about 50% comprised of different high specialty malt bourbons, Tennessee high, our signature Tennessee high malt style, which includes a couple of different smoked malt grains, like beechwood smoke and mesquite wood smoke, and then about 10% is the 91 recipe. So all three of those blended together, and even some of those, actually pretty much all those 1816 barrels that went in there were double barrel as well. So anyways, a unique blend, Founders at 100 proof. And then Solarium barrel strength at Solarium barrel, I call it Solarium barrel strength, but at about 118. So, you guys have any questions about Chattanooga whiskey in the meantime?
So again, Bourbon Quest, this one here is the Founders. And so you can't get this anywhere. So we're very fortunate to be able to do this tasting for you here today. So cheers, Bourbon Quest.
So we're just doing a 3-hour on Thursday, 5 to 8.
And then this is going to be the Solarium at cask strength, which is going to be, as Tim said, around 118 proof, which normally after it comes out of there, they proof it down to 91. So I'm actually getting to taste the Chattanooga 91 at cask strength. How about that, Bourbon Quest? See, I told you, you never know what you're going to get here. That's why you need to hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and ring that bell for notifications. Cheers, Bourbon Quest.
To take some of that, unfortunately.
Oh. That's special.
Yeah.
I wish y'all could try this, Bourbon Quest, but that's what I'm here for, is to bring you this experience here today. But yeah, this is sweet. You get that malt, sugar, caramel. It's very delicious. I can see why this is one of Tim's favorite. Once again, cheers, Bourbon Quest.
We still sell All
right, so that's their tasting. We got to do the Founders and then the Solarium cask strength. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be in a few minutes doing an interview with Tim. But before we do that, as always, I want to say, Bourbon Quest, that my wish for you is that all your Bourbon Quest dreams come true. All right, Bourbon Quest. Well, welcome back. Have the privilege to be joined here today with Tim Piersant. Am I pronouncing that right?
Piersant, technically,
okay.
But very few people know how to pronounce my last name, so that's fine.
Well, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Awesome. So you grew up here, went to school here?
I did, yeah. I went away for college in Alabama, a little school called Auburn. And,
I've heard of them.
And then came back in 04. Met my wife in art school at Auburn. Married in 05. Here, down there, and then moved to Chattanooga. And then in 2011, started Chattanooga Whiskey.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your beginning. I know that you get asked that all the time because it's such a unique story and such a unique beginning. And I don't want to necessarily harp on it, but I know that's something that you're proud of and stuff. So share a little bit with about the beginnings of Chattanooga whiskey.
Oh man, the beginnings were definitely humble. Started in 2011, and it was illegal to distill in the majority of the state of Tennessee.
Which still baffles me as one of the worst business plans I ever heard for a new company.
To start where it's illegal. And but that was an exciting part of Chattanooga whiskey's history to really take that fight on. And it was a fight in the sense that we had to work extensively with local legislation and state legislation. But the community effort was really fun, and it was a huge part of building awareness around the brand, and bringing something cool for the community to come together over. And we're just fortunate that we were able to get it past 2 years after we started.
Absolutely. I always found that to be a very fascinating story. But one of the questions it kind of steered me down the road to is I knew a little bit about the history and how you started and everything, but what inspired you to start a whiskey company in general?
It was the history of whiskey in Chattanooga, and that through a friendship that the two of us that discovered that history and wanted to bring it back. That was really the inspiration. I was shocked that in 2011 that no one was distilling or that no one was working on this, considering you got a pretty major whiskey producer only about 80 miles away from here, and with the history of whiskey in Tennessee in general. But it truly was the law that stood in the way, and it just took a couple of people that were thick-headed enough to take it on.
Well, what's been your greatest challenge both then and now?
I mean, the greatest challenge was going from telling a story and, in the midst of lobbying and changing those laws to distilling your own product. And as you know, there's a lot of brands out there that have no intentions to make their own product.
Well, that's one of the things I kind of found interesting too, is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my knowledge and stuff, it seems like the real boom began in like 2015, 2016 or so. But you were a little bit in front of that with looking at this around 2010, 2011 thereabouts, and then were able to start producing your own stuff right when that real spike and boom of American whiskey took off.
Yeah, no, that's true. I would say that the boom has remained healthy, and especially during COVID, with the amount of bourbon societies that came together online with Zoom tastings, etc. I think that was, I think that kind of even accelerated the boom. But yeah, I think we were early on in terms of a few craft distilleries around the country beginning to distill, and bourbon kind of, beginning to no longer just be, your grandfather's, cough medicine. And then by the time we were distilling in 2015, and by the time we had established the Chattanooga Whiskey Experimental Distillery, which we're proud to say that it is the first distillery in Chattanooga in 100 years, the craft movement had accelerated significantly. And in Tennessee alone, part of that was the law change. It was coming out of the law change and it going from just a few distilleries to dozens of distilleries.
Well, you touched on a little bit about what inspired you to start Chattanooga Whiskey, but I want to ask you, who introduced you to whiskey? Was it your father, a grandfather, an uncle, a friend?
Definitely wasn't my parents, because they didn't drink when I was growing up. So they do now, I think, because they feel like they have to be my number one fan. No, it was. I was never, and still am not, a big drinker. I just I really do love the craftsmanship around the product, and I really do love and can now distinguish flavor profiles. But it was the opportunity and the friendship and doing something completely new and unique in the community that was the beginning of my whiskey loving days.
Absolutely. Well, I know for me, myself, I do love the drinking part of it and the tasting and the profile, but one of the things that always drew me to bourbon too was, again, that history. Whether it be, your companies, like you said, are located 80 miles from here that have 200 plus years of history. That always fascinated me. Or companies like that yourself that just have a 10-year history, but a fascinating one. I know you mentioned a little bit on the tour, but what's your distribution like at currently?
Yeah, so we distribute in 14 states, and everything that is made in Riverfront, where we sit today, is produced for those 14 states. And then we do have the experimental distillery, which we produce about 50 barrels a year of experimental recipes out of there, but those recipes are only sold out of the experimental distillery. Okay. So,
What are your future plans for distribution in Chattanooga whiskey?
Well, I mean, I feel like Chattanooga whiskey is becoming more known as a national brand, albeit we're in 14 states. Eventually, I would like to see us in 50 states, but fortunately, our demand has been really strong and has pushed us to the point of where we're having to increase supply, and so we really can't go beyond those 14 states until we can do that.
Right. Okay. Well, talk a little bit about what sets you apart from other whiskey distillers.
I mean, I think I could touch on a lot of things there.
One or two then.
Well, number one, we make our own style of bourbon whiskey called Tennessee High Malt. And we chose that path due to going after a richer, more complex bourbon whiskey. And we also chose not to do the Lincoln County process, to not be a traditional Tennessee whiskey. And with Tennessee High Malt, what's cool is it's a trademarkable product that we now own. But it is truly ours, and it is truly unique. And there's an education process that comes along with that. We're having to educate that it is a bourbon, that Chattanooga Whiskey 91 and Chattanooga Whiskey 111 are bourbons. They're Tennessee High Malt bourbons.
Right.
And so, and people, can kind of understand that must mean they're higher in malt. But of course, historically, malt goes with Scotch or goes with Irish whiskey, right? And so now you got American single malt that's coming up, and American malts are becoming more popular, but we're a different breed, we're a high malt bourbon.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. I also think having really the only standalone experimental bourbon distillery in the country, where we've explored hundreds of different specialty malts in different barrel finishes and different yeasts, and continue to do so. I mean, more than 400 experimental barrels produced since 2015. I think that's also standalone. And then finally, I would say, culturally, we're just a really unique bourbon whiskey in Tennessee.
Now, is that where you initially started, or is that something that kind of when you partnered up with Grant McCracken that led you down that road, or?
Yeah, I mean, our internal, we have an internal phrase, rules are good, change them. And rules are good is honor the tradition in products and in history, and the change them is be progressive. And Grant really latched onto that and when he was coming in, and I think that was a part of his inspiration, that and his background, his brewing background, to make a high malt bourbon. It was the culmination of those things, and so I would say it was definitely inspired by Grant, but it was also us kind of coming out of this law-changing period or era that also inspired him.
Well, I know you always considered yourself and Chattanooga whiskey to be trailblazers. That's why you have your experimental facility and stuff too. So, are there any new things that are around the corner, or is your focus still really just growing the 91, 111 bottled in bond, or is there anything around the corner that we should be looking out for? Or?
I take a lot of pride in our level of innovation, considering the scale that we do it at. Yes, we are very much a small batch craft bourbon distillery, but I would say that we've scaled this operation pretty significantly, and we are still pushing the level of innovation that we once were a long time ago, and even more so, really. So you've got Chattanooga Whiskey 91, 111, 99 Rye, which is a malted rye, Bottled and Bond, which is a blend of 4 high malt bourbon recipes, 2 vintages, a spring vintage and a fall vintage.
So you're going to continue to put out 2 a year on that? Okay.
2 vintages a year,
All
spring
right.
and fall, different blends. You've got barrel finishing series. Every year we'll come out with a new barrel finish. You've got now Founders, which is coming out this week.
Which I got to taste of.
Yep. So really excited about that. So that'll be an annual release of kind of the past, the present, and the future of different recipes. And we have a Distiller's Variety single barrel pack that we do now, which is really unique. All barrel strength, 4 different recipes, 6 different barrels, all in one case that we distribute, and then we'll continue to do more. But that's our really our lineup right now, and we can do a lot within that lineup, considering the flexibility that we have within Bottled and Bond, flexibility we have within Barrel Finishing Series, within Founders. I mean, these are all really unique blends.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I just want to say thank you for your time, allowing me the opportunity to talk to you today and share with the viewers here on Bourbon Quest a little bit more of an insight to Chattanooga whiskey and the great things that y'all are doing here. I've been a big fan of yours ever since I've been introduced to Chattanooga whiskey. And but before we wrap things up, 'cause I know you're a busy person and I don't want to monopolize your time, but anything additional that you would like to tell the people watching or viewing about Chattanooga whiskey or?
I would say first, thank you for taking interest in what we do. I would say if you want to know more about us, the best place to learn is to come here and to come to the Experimental Distillery. It's an amazing experience.
Talk a little bit about that. What you offer from a tour or experience and stuff like that.
So the Chattanooga Whiskey Experimental Distillery, which is located in downtown Chattanooga at 1439 Market Street, it is a 7-day operation. 7 days a week, every hour on the hour, essentially, starting at lunchtime, starting at noon. We are doing tours, and it's a really in-depth tour. It's a very unique, intimate experience, and it is the flight is unlike really any other, because while you get to explore the variety of what is on the shelf in our different markets, you also get to explore some unique experimental offerings that you can't get anywhere else. And so that is certainly a really awesome experience that we take a lot of pride in. And you get to learn a little bit about history, and you get to see some production there, and a really cool 100-gallon pot still that we distill off of there. And then we, of course, take our favorite recipes and scale up to Riverfront from there. So
awesome. Well, again, thanks Tim for your time and everything and sharing with that. So yeah, Bourbon Quest, if you get a chance to come to Chattanooga, it's a cool city, even outside of Chattanooga Whiskey Company, but you definitely want to come here, take a tour of their experimental facility, see what that's all about. That's something that I know I've got on my to-do list for this summer, so I'm looking forward to that. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come here today and get an inside look, and you taking a little bit of time to share a little bit about your company and what y'all are doing here. And we'll just wrap it up with that, unless you've got anything to add. So.
Thanks, Bourbon Quest. I appreciate it. And
well, thank you, Bourbon Quest. Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And I just want to close by saying, as always, Bourbon Quest, that my wish for you is that all your Bourbon Quest dreams come true. Thanks, Bourbon Quest. We'll see you soon. Cool.
Thanks, man.